The atmosphere was tense in Brussels today as European Union leaders convened for an emergency summit. The war in Ukraine, now in its third year, has cast a long shadow over the continent. With the United States' commitment to Ukrainian aid waning under the second Trump administration, the onus falls on Europe to secure its own backyard. This summit carried the weight of immense expectations. The EU needs to find a unified and effective response to the ongoing crisis. The key issue on the agenda was the Rearm Europe plan, a bold initiative aimed at bolstering the continent's defense capabilities. This plan, if approved, would represent a significant shift in European defense policy. However, the path to a united front is fraught with challenges. Political divisions, economic concerns, and the ever-present shadow of the war in Ukraine loom large over the negotiations. The summit, therefore, represents a critical juncture for the future of Europe. The decisions made here will have far-reaching implications for the continent's security and its role on the global stage. At the heart of the summit was the Rearm Europe plan, a comprehensive strategy to overhaul the continent's defense infrastructure and capabilities. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen presented the plan, emphasizing the need for a stronger and more unified European defense posture. The plan calls for a staggering €800 billion investment over the next decade. This substantial figure underscores the seriousness with which the EU is approaching the current geopolitical realities. The €800 billion would be split into two main streams of funding. €150 billion would be allocated as loans for joint defense projects across member states. This funding aims to encourage collaboration and ensure that European defense efforts are more integrated and efficient. The remaining €650 billion would come from individual member states, each contributing based on their economic capacity. This aspect of the plan has already drawn criticism from some quarters, with concerns raised about the potential strain on national budgets. While the need for a stronger European defense is broadly acknowledged, the Rearm Europe plan has exposed deep divisions within the bloc. Hungary, led by Prime Minister Viktor Orban, has emerged as a vocal critic of the plan. Orban has long been at odds with Brussels, and his opposition to the Rearm Europe plan is rooted in both financial and political concerns. He argues that the plan places an unfair burden on smaller economies like Hungary's. Furthermore, Orban views the plan as another example of what he sees as the EU's overreach into national sovereignty. Hungary is not alone in its opposition. Nationalist parties and movements across Europe have voiced their concerns about the plan. They argue that the focus on defense spending will come at the expense of social welfare programs and economic development. This opposition highlights the difficulty of achieving consensus on such a complex and sensitive issue. Some member states are exploring alternative defense cooperation mechanisms outside the framework of the EU. This fragmentation of European defense efforts could undermine the very purpose of the Rearm Europe plan, which is to create a more unified and cohesive European defense posture. Section 4, Zelensky's plea and Europe's response. The gravity of the situation was underscored by the presence of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Addressing the summit, Zelensky delivered a powerful and emotional plea for continued European support. He reminded the assembled leaders that Ukraine stands as a bulwark against Russian aggression, defending not just its own territory but also the values and principles upon which the EU was founded. Zelensky's words served as a stark reminder of the human cost of the ongoing conflict. He spoke of the recent attack on his hometown, Kryvyi Rih, a grim testament to the relentless nature of the war. The EU responded to Zelensky's plea with a renewed commitment to providing military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. However, the recent freeze on U.S. aid has created a significant funding gap. European leaders acknowledge that they will need to increase their contributions significantly to fill this void. This will require difficult decisions to be made regarding national budgets and spending priorities. Despite the challenges, the EU remains steadfast in its support for Ukraine. This unwavering solidarity sends a clear message to Moscow that Europe stands united in its condemnation of Russian aggression. Section 5, the path forward, uncertainty and resolve. As the summit drew to a close, a sense of both uncertainty and resolve hung in the air. The Rearm Europe plan, while ambitious and necessary, faces significant hurdles before it can be implemented. Political divisions within the EU threaten to derail the plan altogether. The economic implications of such a massive investment program are still being debated, with concerns about debt and austerity measures being raised. The war in Ukraine, the very catalyst for this renewed focus on European defense, continues to rage, casting a long shadow over any plans for the future. Despite the challenges, there is a palpable sense of determination among European leaders. The war in Ukraine has been a wake-up call, exposing the continent's vulnerabilities and the need for a more robust and unified defense posture. The EU is acutely aware that it can no longer rely on the United States to guarantee its security. The path forward will be fraught with obstacles, but the events of the past 3 years have made one thing abundantly clear. Europe must take charge of its own destiny. The next EU summit, scheduled for March 20th to 21st, will be crucial in determining whether the bloc can translate its newfound resolve into concrete action.